All right, everybody, welcome back to the Next Level Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Leslie. Today is a season 1 recap. Okay, we had 22, I think, episodes in season 1. Hooray, we made it past that first season challenge. So yay me, I'm super proud. Give myself a pat on the back and a little clap. And we had some really phenomenal guests, a lot of information, and it was so beautiful because it grew. It grew from this space where I was wanting to share my story and collaborate and exchange with people who had similar type of challenges, because I was really at the beginning of my podcast really stepping out back in the world post all of my crazy legal challenges and all that stuff. So it was very much a healing thing for me. And I obviously, like I do in everything that I put my mind to in life, accelerated very quickly through that. So I had just 4 or 5 episodes with people who were resilience-based and challenging. I'm like, okay, we're done. I'm healed. They're good. Now what's next? And I had these really awesome guests that talked about being champions in their life and some mental health issues, because I'm so much about mental wellness, not necessarily mental illness or mental health in general, just our mental wellness. It's sort of a new trending word, and I love it because it's so applicable, because everyone needs mental wellness. And we'll talk about that in a minute more. And then season 2, oh my God, it's supercharged. Now we're talking about anti-aging regeneration. And I have changed. I've up-leveled so much in this short period of time. It's not even a year yet. I think my 1-year anniversary is not until the end of December, or something like that, or November. And it's just been absolutely shooting through the stars, rocket-like, to bring you guys all of this wonderful content so that you can master yourselves and have the life hacks to help you create that self-mastery as quickly, efficiently, and effectively as possible, because that's what I'm all about. And clearly I have been a demonstration of that and continue to do so every day. So this season 1 recap is going to be basically going through the highlights of what I felt were really important takeaways. I mean, everything was important, but ones that I felt that I really wanted to communicate to you all. So the very beginning, like I said, was about these resilience stories and people who had these challenges and how did they overcome them. And so the first few guests, I had John Orlando, Adam Klosson, Nada was a little bit later in the season. They shared their experiences of hardship. So John, poor guy, he ended up having a ton of debt to some really, really tough people. And I think he had said one of his friends had died at that same time or similarly. And it was just a really big shock to him. And I believe he said he was in the shower and he had just this epiphany. And he was like, I need to make a serious change in my life. The light switch went on and he said, I have to make a change. He got very humble. He surrendered to his circumstance. And then he reached out to his friends and family to sort of get himself back on a better foot. Adam Klosson, sentenced to over 200 years in prison. He ended up getting out, I think, around that 20-year mark, give or take, and really was able to just completely transform himself against all odds. And then Nada, of course, she ended up leaving her job, a very, very high-end job. She married someone, and a month later, he just took off on her. And she had no money, no job, in a foreign place. So these 3 people shared their stories of challenge. And these 3 that had something in common was they had foundations from their childhood of this innate knowing that they can achieve, that they were strong, they were confident, they knew that they could just make it in the world. So that doesn't really help most of us because we are not born in situations like John was born to Tony Orlando, who's was a superstar in I don't know, the 50s, 60s, 70s. Adam Klosson, he was but with all the crazy shit that he did, he always knew that he could get whatever he wanted. That's why he made such a great criminal, but it also made him so successful as he is now and got him out of a really literally sticky situation in prison. And it was just I remember quoting him that he was like a freak of nature because he just had this innate, strong sense of knowing. He did not flinch. He just said when he was sentenced, all right, well, I'm going to get out of this. I'm not serving the rest of my life here. There is a way. And he was just hell-bent on doing it. And that was a natural thing. Many people don't innately have that. And same with Nada. She had two parents that were very, very self-evolution focused, very much about confidence building and cheering. And every day they'd go to school and they'd be getting these positive affirmations. So these three were really trained. And I thought that was very fascinating to have these people share. But it didn't help many of us who don't have those circumstances. So, what is it that keeps people? This is one of the things that I want to address. In my journey, I had a bottle of pills in my hands a couple of times, and I was able to stop myself because I had this knowing. I had this sort of awakening. I felt that there was something more, that I could have something more. What stops people who don't have these upbringings of beauty and support? How do they stop themselves from killing themselves? There's many suicides. I mean, this is a real thing that happens, and you don't have to have a mental illness to commit suicide. People do it all the time. And sorry to go so dark on you guys, but these are real things that I go to in my head as a clinician, as an investigator, that's the bottom, right? I want to investigate the top and the bottom, the most successful and the people that, well, I can't interview someone who commits suicide, unfortunately, but we have people who've gotten very close. So how do we reconcile this? How do we get people that are at the very bottom rise up again? And so I ended up having two people on my podcast that I specifically want to name, Christina Lauren, and I had the other one was, let me look at my note. Oh yes, Lana. They both experienced some very, very hardship times. Christina Lauren had an incredibly toxic relationship that completely derailed her. Lana had been an exotic dancer and it suffered a lot of sexual abuse and other types of abuse on her way through her life. And they've both been able to transform themselves and both continuing to. And so I wanted to reach out into those episodes and remind us too of how we can sort of rise up from these really challenging places. And the common thread, really, what I find is, and not just in those episodes, but in general, we have to get into a healing space. So the people that didn't have these challenges, these hurts or whatever from their childhood, they don't have to go through maybe as much, if at all, those dark nights of the soul or those soul-searching, deep wound fixing processes. But for the rest of us, we have to. And one of the key things that I wanted to bring out was the importance and the critical nature of forgiveness on the healing journey. And again, healing journey, it gives me one of those knots in my stomach. It's in the same category as God and spirituality and love, because those are all very supercharged words in humanity. There's just so much negativity and suffering around them. So I don't even like to say the word healing journey. So you know what? Let's on the spot come up with something better. Recovery doesn't work. Austin, let's see. Restoration, no. You know what? We'll come up with it.
Paint job.
Paint job.
There you go. Feels like you give your house a paint job, you give your car a paint job.
Yeah.
Give your life a paint job.
Give your life a paint job. Right. I like that. Yeah. Or just sort of erasing. I like erasing. Reconditioning.
That sounds more official than paint job.
All right. Well, we're just playing a little bit here. But so we want to basically erase that trauma, erase that hurt, and get to a neutral place, right? We want to get to a place of neutrality. And forgiveness is really, really a powerful concept to embody because, like I said, it actually neutralizes. And this is not, people ask me, well, why? Why is forgiveness so powerful? Well, it helps. It's really for you. It's not about the other person. People say, well, I could never forgive that person for doing X, Y, and Z to me and blah, blah. So what we have to understand is our lives, who we are and what we create is all just a projection of ourselves. So we first need to come into the understanding that all of this that we think is material and or is life and the circumstances we created. Now, again, I don't want to take away anyone's victimization, because people get things done to them, right? They don't choose it. But on a level, it was a necessary part of whatever it is you chose to experience here. So that's what I mean by that part. So when we understand that, okay, this is a projection of what I'm needing to experience and learn, because that's what life is about. We're meant to experience bliss and joy. But to get there are certain things that we chose to experience to then overcome. So those of us who have had to have these not perfect childhoods, we need to forgive so that we can create space to then move from. And this is basic physics. This isn't even just fluffy or psychological or theory. It's basic physics that when you like attracts like. So when you are in a vibration, if you will, or an energy state, whatever you want to call it, of lacking forgiveness, you're contracted. There's no room for forgiveness. There's no room for love, because it's a contracted vibration. So when you look at when we understand ourselves as energy beings or souls or consciousness or whatever you want to call it, particles having a physical life experience, then it makes much more sense, because that is truth, firstly. Second, it allows you to feel empowered that you can make a change to your circumstance and understand that it's your state of being that matters, not circumstance that matters. So when you understand that you can control your perception, you can control your outer world by how you interpret it, then everything can change. So forgiveness is one of those very, very first things on this healing-esque paint job / erasing, reconditioning life journey that we're on. So that's a really important takeaway I wanted you guys to remember. And yes, I made a little note to myself here that we need to understand that those of us that were born without these perfect childhoods or these support systems or, this innate ability, freak of nature ability, is not a deficit, and we shouldn't feel ashamed or sad about that. I know I did for a long time. Even though I knew I was meant for greatness, I didn't understand why my life wasn't great. The math didn't quite add up there. I know I'm meant for greatness, but my life isn't great. I have all this baggage. What the hell gives? So those of us who have had these challenged lives, we have to remember that we are here to be an example and to help other people, because the majority of the population is suffering and challenged. It's the minority that have more of like the extras, and their life is meant to be different. Those of us that are challenged are here to help and to heal and to do whatever our crazy, wild, amazing mission is. Not to take away from people who have had these innate abilities. They have their own, very important lives too. But someone had told me this one time, and I absolutely loved it when I had shared my story. It was at the very beginning when I was first stepping out and very shy and self-conscious and embarrassed and felt disempowered and rejected by society. When I shared all my hardships, I was like so lovingly embraced, not physically, but just it felt like a warm hug when I was told, you're like an elastic band, right? They said, I haven't had the same challenges you have, so my elastic band maybe only stretched this far. So when you let go, it may only go that far, right? That's physics. But when you stretch your elastic band that far, like I had, it's going to go far, right? And so it was so beautiful because that is physics right there. It made so much sense, and it's absolutely true. So What we need to do is we need to take that elastic band analogy and understand that all these quote unquote challenges, they are actually momentum being built. It is the energy that's building and building. It's all the skills. It's all of the determination and the tenacity and the character building. All of that is necessary. So when it is time to let go, bam, you will be a rocket. And it's so beautiful because that's exactly what has happened to me, particularly in the last 4 months. I have just been upgrading and accelerating like a badass, truly. And that elastic band let go, and there's no stopping me because I know I have that confidence. I have that confidence and that knowing in myself that I was searching for, that other people had naturally, or maybe didn't work necessarily as hard for, or they just had more of the infrastructure to support their shift a little bit easier. You know, mine was the opposite. I was all by myself, literally isolated in a foreign country, and had to like figure this shit out on my own. And now I'm in a place where I can really help be of service to other people. And it's so beautiful. And I love that I can be an example and a help to others and share other people's stories as well who have been successful in their journey too. So it is very, very possible. And it's a very rewarding journey when you get to the other side of it and that elastic lets go. So keep going. If you're out there struggling, challenged, there is an end. The elastic band does let go. And just know that, really, really know and believe and accept that if you're in the middle of a challenge, you have to just, you know, if you keep stretching, know this is all momentum building. You are learning skills. Be wise and follow your guidance on doing the things, following the inspiration, because that is the key to getting that elastic band to finally let go. So that's another little tidbit. And I had talked a little bit about the creation process in one of my episodes. I just felt it was important to share here too. We don't want to stay in the elastic band stretch point, right? We have choice over that, how long that will take to build, and when that end date can be to finally shoot off into the stars. And that, like I said, that it's really about following your bubblies, following your bliss. When you feel stuck, there's always a path forward. It may not make sense what that path is or what you're being nudged to or what the intuition is, but you have to follow it because oftentimes it's a blind journey. You can only see the step that's in front of you, and that's how you make it. That's how I made it. Literally, it was like I was blind and I just had to take one. It was like micro steps at a time, and then I've arrived. So please keep that in mind as well. All right. The next area that I wanted to chat with you guys all about in season 1 also was physical health hacks. So I had Ron from, gosh, I'm blanking on it, Maximum Velocity Physical Therapy. He is very fascinating because I met him at one of the Super Bowl parties in the podcast studio, and I was having like these little aches and pains of starting to Argentine tango competitively, and all of my trauma in my body from when I was bikini muscle fitness training was starting to act up in my legs and my hips, and I was like, oh God, this again. I had to take this supplement. It was called Cell Chem by, I think it's called Nuvigen. And it saved my life. Not literally my life, but it saved my competitive days, because without it, I would not have been able to keep training my legs and make it to my competition, which I placed first in. So it was like a phenomenal thing, but my muscle tightness was becoming more and more consistent, and I thought and knew that there was a better way. So I wouldn't have any of it, not just managing it, like I wouldn't have any. And so I was introduced to Ron. You got to meet this guy. He will make you pain-free in 3 months, or 3 weeks. Pain-free in 3 weeks. No. Oh, I couldn't believe it. And, but I said, you know what? I'm a researcher. I'm an investigator. I will absolutely take that challenge. I mean, I'm up for anything. And there was no joke. His perspective is, and there's growing information on what he's doing. It's a little bit newer in the literature, but again, being a doctor in nursing practice, Sometimes we have to be innovative. We take the literature, we assimilate it, we put it into practice. I do it at the personal level. I've done it at corporate level. I've done it, globally. And so I was fascinated because he's a little bit more on the generating research side. There wasn't really a ton to support this, but it freaking worked. And it makes sense. The theory behind it makes sense. So when people are lifting really heavy and they're just, maxing out on their heavy weights, it's putting a lot of stress on the micro muscles and the ligaments. There are different types of muscle fibers. And when you don't have stability in your joint and you're putting a lot of pressure on your larger muscles, it will tweak. Like that's why when you're doing, let's say, a deadlift and you're doing it heavy, you have to have perfect form. Otherwise, you're going to fuck something up. And I've tweaked my muscles and my T-bands when my knee just kind of jars in a little bit too much. I'll feel it and I'm like, I did it. I have to foam roll it because I can feel the little micro tear, and then it'll turn into a knot and then it'll start pulling. It's just a disaster. I've seen this in my body so many times. So working with him and creating the micro strength in those collateral muscles apparently only takes 3 weeks. And it's so true. Literally in 3 weeks, I did not have that spasm in my leg. He had me doing these bands at nighttime. What I was taught in ballet and all of my training was when you feel tension or tightness or whatever, you're supposed to go stretch it out. That is actually communicating something completely different to your body than actually stretching, other than strengthening those collateral muscles. Literally, when I would train them, the muscles that were spasming, the spasm stopped and I could go right to sleep versus foam rolling or stretching it out. And the mechanism is you're telling your muscles to be tight and bulky, right? You want to build muscle, but then by stretching them out, it's actually creating laxity. So it's sending mixed messages to the muscles, is the theory. And lo and behold, doing it his way, which is no, you don't want to stretch it out. You actually want to be strengthening and tightening the collateral muscles around. It actually did take the pain away. So I guess the theory there was by contracting the muscles, you're pulling the muscles in place so that you're not, it's the actual, the larger muscle that's out of, is in a sense pulling the collateral muscles out of their position. And that's what's causing the pain because it's a misalignment. When you instantly give those collateral muscles some tension, it in a way basically pulls that larger muscle in place. Is kind of how I've broken it down. So again, more research needs to be discovered in this, but the theory makes sense and it frickin' worked for me and many other people in the studio that have worked with Ron. So very much something that I want people to be taking away is if they're having some pain in their body, musculoskeletal, and they're training really heavy, really do consider what your micro muscles are doing. Look at your stability. Look at doing some other type of physical therapy training that again focuses on that foundational infrastructure. Because it really is it's been transformational for my physical health. And now I can tango like a superstar. And it's given me so much more mobility as well. So important takeaway there. The other thing I did also want to share on that episode was Ron had mentioned, I think it was the 10 to 12 rep range was the point of maximum hypertrophy. There was a little, I think he might have misunderstood what I had said. And I did a little bit more. I want to clarify this one. So there are lots of studies that talk about training muscle for density versus hypertrophy. So when I did my bikini muscle competition, I wanted to be as big as possible as I could naturally, right? And so the research suggested lifting heavy in the 4 to 6 rep range so that by 6, you are at your max. That actually works the fibers that will grow your muscles to make them bigger, right? Does not necessarily mean stronger or more metabolically active, right? So larger doesn't mean dense. There could be a lot of air or a lot of fluid, or again, it's a different type of muscle fiber. So the correct rep range per research is 4 to 6 reps for maximum muscle hypertrophy. And usually they recommend a 3-minute rest interval in between so that you can recover. And that's exactly how my training went when I was bikini muscle competition training. Is I would literally be in the gym for like 30 minutes. I would do a lot of cardio just to burn, fat and lean out, but I would be waiting around for the majority of the time. It would only take me maybe 30 seconds, if that, to do 4 to 6 reps of heavy. And then I would wait around for 3 minutes. It was really funny. People didn't understand how it was transforming my body when I barely seemed to be working out. That's the beauty of knowing what muscle fibers and what what muscle fibers and what weight range to be working in. And going back to what Ron was saying, he was misunderstood what I was saying, but it was a 10 to 12 rep range, I believe, is what he was suggesting. And that is for maximum muscle density. So density is where you're going to have more of the strength. That is when your metabolism is going to be shooting through the roof. Think of maybe not the greatest example, but a swimmer. They're long and lean, and they are like, their muscles are freaking dense. So dense. They're very, very strong, and they eat like, we call them in Canada carburetors. You call them garbage disposals. They just like food, just right through them. So when you train in that rep range, you're going to really get that nice, dense, long, lean look, and fat won't hang off of you. And that's actually so wonderful. That's actually the rep range that I'm starting to work in, and literally just starting to transform my body physically. I've got the insides taken care of with my carnivore diet and all those sort of things. But now being able to work on really densifying. I don't want the volume. I want that long, lean, and I want to supercharge my metabolism, and it's been super crazy. So just wanted to correct that and make sure that everyone knew the difference there. I have a little bit of time left. I wanted to get into a little bit about, I'm going to talk about the gut-brain axis first. If we have time, we'll talk a little bit about the mental health challenges that we're experiencing. We talked a little bit about that before, but Mandy White was on talking about the gut-brain axis. This is a staple episode. If any of you have not seen it, you absolutely must see that episode. I recommend it to so many people. The other one is the carnivore diet that I had in season 2, but we're not talking about season 2 recap yet. Mandy is brilliant. She was a trainer to the celebrities, and she's a nutrition expert among many other credentials she has. She was I think she did fitness. She was at Fitness Pro, champion. So very, very much in the nutrition world. And she educated me a little bit more about this new research on the gut-brain axis. Literally, we know that the gut is the second brain, and there are trillions, I think, billions maybe. I'm not sure which illions it is. I don't even know if we know for sure yet either, of neurotransmitters in the belly. So like when you have that excited feeling, that bubbly feeling, or the scared feeling that's in your stomach, that's actually the excitation of your nerves. So we understand that there's many pathways that communicate your stomach to your brain. So our mental wellness, our clarity, our focus is so connected to our gut health. We cannot deny this anymore. And this is a critical piece. This is why when I went on the carnivore eating lifestyle, it completely regenerated my gut. My clarity, many things. And we'll do a recap episode of my carnivore experience, which is like way more than I ever experienced, but it completely cleared out my gut. That's one approach. You don't have to do the carnivore. There are other ways to supplement if you have different types of eating styles. But when you don't have sugar, you don't have things clinging to your gut, you're going to have the humoral, hormonal, neuro, and immune pathways to your brain working at a much better way. You're going to be able to think and perceive and receive and interact better. You're going to have more emotional regulation. There's research that children with autism, when they clear their gut-brain axis, they start speaking. They have more emotion. They have more development that really seems like spontaneous change. It's a real phenomena. Kids with ADHD, they're calming down. They're able to be less restless. Even with bipolar, schizophrenia is being discovered to be very heavily parasitic related. And when you clear out the gut and the bowels, there's so much more symptom control. I mean, it's compounded. Some of these more complicated mental illnesses have more, like I said, factors involved, but the gut-brain axis is huge. And I'm all about self-mastery. If we cannot mentally receive information that's coming from wherever it comes from, wherever you believe that in those insights, those downloads, that inspiration, that excitement, those dreams, those visions, the passions come from, how are you going to be able to communicate that into a tangible act? How are you going to believe it? How are you going to have the confidence? How are you going to harness the power of your mind to even heal or do whatever it is that you're being called to do? The brain has to be clean and clear to receive that information. And then you need to be able to have that clear ability to process it and then take action on it. So this mental wellness is so important. And that gut-brain axis is another piece that I want people to really stay on top of and learn more about, educate yourself, and find out how you can really purify your gut in a way that works with your eating style so that you can really maximize your mental potential, your mental wellness potential. How are we doing for time? All right, we got a few more minutes. The last things were, again, along this line with Mandy, is the mental health concerns. So I had George Carmona on speaking about kids' mental illness and how they're being failed in the school system. And then Dorian, he had a rough upbringing and how he got into drugs and alcohol, and that really took over his life. George was talking about the lack of financial support of school systems and the lack of training that teachers have to provide that mental and emotional support for children. And he gave some suggestions as how we could fix that. He was a teacher, I believe, doing some special education, and really great insights about some of the challenges at the school level. And I know more and more kids are being identified that needs extra support, which is wonderful, but we don't have the infrastructure yet to be able to create that. And we really need more innovative solutions. So I'm actually putting a call out to anybody who has some ideas or lives in a country that maybe has some solutions and has some innovative ways that the school systems are helping children with emotional or behavioral challenges to thrive and succeed. Even if they're non-traditional, it's time that really we need to create a different type of system, because as we said, if we as children don't have the support, we have to go through this as adults, learning how to manage ourselves and cope and heal and finally get to a baseline where we can do, our life. I'd really love to see children have a lot more support when they're young so that they don't have to do as much of the heavy lifting when they're older. They can still be very successful and be gurus and live their life purpose without having to go to the very depths of challenges where it could literally risk their life, or others as well. Now with Dorian, he was chatting with me about how with everything that he went through, he finally exercised the power of his choice. So he came from a rough upbringing. He was bouncing around home to home. They were, I think, homeless for a while as well. And he expressed some strategies that many other people on my podcast also had expressed. Things like affirmations. There were gratitude journals using vision boards. So Adam Klosson used a vision board when he was in prison. And really the key to all of that is repetition. So it's just like lifting weights. It's about the repetition that will grow the muscle. When you're wanting to make a change in a belief, a change in your lifestyle, a change in literally anything, there's so much power in repetition. It is ingraining. It is setting the intention. This is also a physics thing, right? It's building momentum. It's reinforcing. It's not just about you have to do repetition. I think there was someone said that after 21 days, that's when a habit changes. Yeah, give or take, but no one ever really explained why. It's about the repetition, and it's the energetic force behind it. It's the intention, it's the commitment, it's the dedication, and all of that is sending a message. You're literally reprogramming not just your neural pathways in your brain, but it's actually a physics experience that's happening. So repetition, don't ever give up on your desire. Use your passion. Be passionately passionate about what you want to do, because that is the common denominator about everyone who has been on my podcast. When they wanted something, whether they had a great life or not, they decided, they committed, and they became passionate about getting where they need to be. So find your passion, create that passion however you can, be repetitive, do not stop, and you will succeed. You will get there. And follow your bubbles and your bliss and all of those nudges along the way, because that is the path to your discovery and your self-mastery and to creating the life that you are here to have. All right. Wonderful. Season 1 was amazing. Season 2 is off to a huge, amazing start. So I will see you guys next time.